Welcome to Transmissions from the Transgender Battleground. I'm CatLady762, and as always, if you like this video, please consider hitting the little buttons to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Also, please remember that all views expressed on my channel are those of myself, CatLady762, and do not necessarily represent those of Gender Dysphoria Alliance. This is going to be part 1 of a video series discussing children with dysphoria. This video in particular is going to discuss the difference, in my opinion, between the concepts of children with dysphoria and transgender children. So in recent years, it's become very popular amongst trans activists and the transgender community to promote this idea that there are transgender children. This fits very well with the concept of gender identity ideology, in that there's this belief that everybody has this innate gender identity that we have from birth, and that it is possible for very young children even to understand and have knowledge of what their gender identity is. I've even seen some activists claim that babies and children that are too young to even be verbal can express dissatisfaction with their assigned gender and show indication that they are trans. I'll let some of you think about how insane that is. That children that don't even have the ability to form words somehow have come to the cultural realization of what their gender is and what their sex is and how it doesn't fit somehow. Now, my personal belief is different from most of the people within the trans community. My belief of what transgender is actually going through a process of transition as a treatment to potentially alleviate dysphoria. That is different from having a gender identity. So I can fully accept that there are children that experience gender dysphoria. I myself was one. If you're interested in reading a little bit about my personal experiences as a child with gender dysphoria, you can go to the Gender Dysphoria Alliance webpage and read my blog entry. Also, I may include a video in this series discussing that to some extent. But that's different from being a transgender child. And the main difference and the main issue I have with this idea of transgender children is transgender is tended to be presented as a fixed, decided thing within gender ideology. You are, by default, transgender because of your identity. There's nothing that can be done about that. The issue, though, is that lots of people can experience gender dysphoria. Historically, we have studies showing that the majority of children that experience gender dysphoria eventually outgrow it. We have plenty of personal narratives of adults that have found ways to cope or outgrow or deal with their gender dysphoria that did not include transition. We have examples of detransitioners. And I would think that it would be very hard to tell somebody that went through a process of transition that they did not experience gender dysphoria. Now, the activists would like you to believe that the children that are being called trans children now are somehow different from all those that eventually outgrow or find other ways to deal with dysphoria. They will say, well, the criteria has changed. We're doing a better job of diagnosing who is trans. And so only those that are really trans are progressing on to puberty blockers and hormones and eventually surgery. But do we really know that? Activists like to throw up studies. What they don't always do is critically analyze those studies. So you get a lot of studies from, say, the mid 2000, say 2015, 14, even 2017, that will tell you that the outcomes for transition are positive. That, all these things, we're doing everything right in diagnosing who should transition, who is trans, and how to treat them. What very few go into is the fact that the current standards changed in 2012. Now, people that understand how scientific studies are done understand that they are not instantaneous. They can take years to get approval, to get the data, to analyze the data, to get published. So we are now in 2021. Standards for diagnosis changed in 2012. That means that it has been 9 years since those standards have changed, which means the youngest that were diagnosed using those standards, that were maybe given puberty blockers at that point, are just now hitting adulthood. Most of the people that would be included in those studies were diagnosed, most likely, under earlier criteria. We don't have long-term studies of the effectiveness for the current group of children that are being diagnosed under the current criteria, because those people have not transitioned long enough to really have a definitive understanding of the long-term outcomes. In theory, Jazz Jennings, one of the trans children poster child, should be amongst the first cohorts of this. And to some extent, you understand that if you watch the search that they went through to get surgery. A lot of the surgeons were unfamiliar with how to treat somebody that had been on puberty blockers and did not go through puberty. And regardless of what you think about her personally, I am very sympathetic to the difficulties that her surgeries had. But that's also, to me, an indication that there is knowledge and information that is lacking in this discussion. I don't believe that we are suddenly doing a miraculous job of figuring out which children are trans, which children are going to be helped by transition, and absolutely nothing else. Because transition is a very serious treatment. You can say it's not. You can talk about social transition versus medical transition, which is what my next video is going to be talking about. But transition is serious. Gender dysphoria is also serious, but they're different things. And if you are just automatically going to say that a child is trans, you have essentially already given them a course of treatment. And I think that is a very dangerous thing. But I will end part 1 now. Please watch part 2, which is going to talk about social transition for children. Thank you.